When people look at a map and notice the Iberian Peninsula, their first thought is,
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
why isn't the Iberian Peninsula a single country? Much like Italy, it has a mountain range separating them to the continent. But unlike Italy, the autonomous regions and kingdoms in the area did not manage to merge together to form a single nation. Why is that? If you would like to support the channel, make sure to check out our merch in the first link in the description. Now back to the video. If you watched my previous video, you already know how these two magnificent countries were once united under a single flag. And as I said, the similar languages, culture, currency, history and values, among other factors, could very well make these two sleeping giants unite again, resulting in a smooth country union. I understand that some people might not be happy with it, and the chances of not working out are high, but let's assume for a minute that the majority of the population would vote for this, and somehow the union actually worked. Since this is not the reality yet, we have the full freedom to imagine how it would be like, and most importantly, how the flag would look like. I took the freedom to create some flag designs that could possibly be used. Feel free to pause the video and let me know in the comments down below which one is your favorite. Now back to the video. Learning from the mistakes of the past, this new union would have to be rectified in a couple of things. The first one being the members. If Portugal united directly with Spain as a whole, its influence will be negligible, as size, population and economy are almost incomparable. But if instead Spain was divided in autonomous regions and finally gave the much wanted independence to Catalonia, the Basque State and Galicia for example, the map of the regions would look something like this. With the addition of Portugal and all of its archipelagos, Gibraltar ruled by the United Kingdom, Ceuta and all the Spanish territories in northern Africa, and finally Andorra in the Pyrenees, the Iberian Union would be completed. Most Western European countries are seeing their economies stagnate, the population getting older and their influence in the world diminish, especially Southern European countries like Greece, Italy and the Iberian Brothers, which on top of that are experiencing serious financial difficulties in the past decades due to the 2008 crisis. To counter this trend, this union could see the creation of a new, bigger and stronger European power inside the European Union. With the exit of Britain, the sitting of power would no longer be disputed only between France and Germany, but by a third superpower, the Iberian Union. This new power would challenge the EU and have a greater influence on their decisions. With a combined population of 58 million, 600 kilometers squared and a GDP of $2.6 trillion, the Iberian Union will be richer and bigger than South Korea for example, and similar to Italy. The increase in budget, workforce and brainpower would lead to bigger and better projects, greater investments from abroad, and especially by creating economic alliances with their former colonies, it could lead to a stronger economic union that could either work with or challenge the European Union. I know it's too far-fetched, but this union could combine some African countries and the whole of Central and South America, and, if we take a step even further, the creation of a Latin Union with all of the Latin-speaking countries will surpass the Commonwealth and become the biggest international union in the world. Okay, I'll stop now. Even I think that is a step too far. But let's go back a couple of steps. Right, the Iberian Union. This is the map of what the exclusive economic zone would look like if the countries were combined today. And this is the map of what the EEZ would look like if the recently submitted expansion was accepted. Think of all the minerals, fish and energy sources this would give to the economy. I am totally certain that this will be revolutionary, not only to them, but to the entire EU and the technology industry. All of the raw materials needed for the production of batteries, for example, can be found here, and the Iberia could become the battery powerhouse that Europe is looking for. Much of these materials are expected to see their demand exponentially rise in the next decades, and at the moment, China definitely has the monopoly. I've recently touched on this subject in my video about lithium deposits found in Portugal, but this could be revolutionary for the whole of the peninsula. If managed the right way, raw materials lead to extraction and supply companies that later create or lead to the creation of refinement facilities that turn the natural resources into refined material for it to be manipulated and manufactured into something useful, and after that, first-tier suppliers start to sell their stock to multinational companies. Once the industrial core is created, startups can lead the way in creating high-end, consumer-driven products and develop the economy in a way that will put the countries in the front seat of research and development. After that point, everything just starts to flow. The companies start making partnerships with universities, not only to share the cost of research, but also to use it as a recruitment tool, luring young brilliant minds to work for the company and use the innovative ideas to try and disrupt the industry. Once the brand name starts to get recognized, it's easier to get investment and attract smart people from all over the world, so from there on, there is no stopping. I would say that at the moment, both countries are stuck on the supply stage. The biggest sector from each country is the automotive sector, but the biggest car brand in the peninsula is Spain's Seat, which is owned by Volkswagen from Germany. Portugal also has a presence in the automotive market with Famel, Caetano Bus, and some manufacturing plants, but again, the biggest one is Auto Europa, which is also from the VW group. It seems as though they can only manage to have manufacturing plants due to the cheap labor and strategic location, but lack the money and power to have an independent presence in the market. These same factors, combined with good education, developed economies, and adequate infrastructure, are the reason why automotive suppliers flock to these regions and make up the biggest industry in each economy, with around 13% for Portugal and 19% for Spain. The rest of the economy is mainly composed of the food, devices, and machine industries for both countries, while Spain is bigger in chemicals and Portugal in fuel and minerals. The top 3 companies in each of the nations are namely the energy giants EDP, food retailer group Jerónimo Martins, and oil giants Galp for Portugal, and for Spain, they have the Inditex group that owns Zara, energy giants Iberdrola, and the famous Santander Bank, just to name a few. But enough with the comparisons, let's look at the future. Nowadays, the peninsula is only connected energetically to the EU by 6%, despite the 15% target. But the Lisbon Declaration is seeing measures being put in place like infrastructure and cooperation agreements between Spain, France and Portugal to change that. This will also be crucial for the energy union expansion into the Euro-Mediterranean partners, and make Europe less reliant on Russia. This union could also help cool down the disputes on the water and energy consumptions in the dams between the shared rivers. Portugal is one of the EU leading countries in renewables, with a high percentage of hydro and wind. Since 2014, more than half of the energy consumption is supplied by renewable sources, and recently Portugal broke a new record, with renewable power production surpassing total electricity consumption. In other words, last year Portugal managed to produce more energy from renewables alone than the entire country's consumption. Think about that. But it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. One of the problems about using dams as energy producers is that it forces people to release water down the river even when the scarcity is high. Southern Europe is getting drier and drier as years go by, and the rise in temperature due to the global warming are making the summer fires in these regions bigger and more frequent. Droughts are not uncommon and make the tensions between the states increase. Another recent hiccup was the high-speed train that planned to connect both capitals Lisbon and Madrid. Although Spain will complete its high-speed line to the cross-border at Badajoz by 2030, Portugal cancelled its sections years ago, derailing plans for improved cross-border links between the Iberian capitals. Hopes for this plan fluctuate with the prevailing political winds in these neighboring countries, but the fact that the EU is pushing hard for the high-speed train revolution in the continent puts the odds on the rise. Other plans are still going forward though, with a connection between Porto, Braga and Galicia on the way, and the expansion of the megaport of Sines possibly resulting in a connection between it and the Huelva port or Badajoz, like I mentioned in my previous video. The EU is planning to replace planes with high-speed trains, and honestly, for short and medium travels, I can't think of a better option, especially due to the fact that the time wasted on security checks will be non-existent. But more on this in a later video, so make sure to subscribe. Another major problem would be the actual government. How could a monarchy ever unite with a republic? Also, where would the capital be? Logistically, most people would say Madrid. It has more people, it's the center of the peninsula, and it was purposely located there to try and balance the sphere of influence in the region. But Portugal would most likely reject that. So what would the solution be? To make a new capital city from scratch? Maybe between the borders? This will require some dialogue in order to settle this in a friendly way. And speaking of dialogue, there would also be an issue of language, and the danger of Spanish in the long term overcoming Portuguese. Although, inside Spain itself, we already have examples of local languages which have resisted and persist being used, such as Basque, Catalan or Galician, so Portuguese would for sure remain a language in Portugal. The new country would then have 5 official languages. A fun fact is that Galician has a lot of similarities with Portuguese already, and Galicia itself has a movement that wants to leave Spain and join Portugal, creating the much-wanted Portugalicia. And who knows, the train could be the first step. Another thing I forgot to mention is that both economies are very similar not only in product exports but also in services and other segments. Tourism accounts for almost 20% of the entire GDP for each of them, and because they share most of the industry, we could assume the economies would fit together very well, since Portugal already imports 31% of their products to Spain and exports 25%. Oh, and they would also have one of the best football leagues and national teams in the world, if not the best. Spain has won countless trophies, and Portugal is the latest European champions, also winning the first edition of the League of Nations, and both teams counting with some of the best players in the sport's history. Again, if you would like to see how it was with the first Iberian Union and what went wrong, make sure to watch the video displayed on the screen right now. Thank you for watching until the end, and obrigado.